It's 91.1 WSPN, Skidmore College Radio. You're hanging out with George Burns from the Full Metal Racket Show, and I'm here hanging out with Karyn Crisis.
Hello, hello.
And I just have a few questions to ask you here. Just to get some background information, I want to know why Crisis, and what's Crisis, and why Karyn Crisis?
Well, in 1993, I moved down near the World Trade Center, and I was making music on a 4-track, something that I learned to do a few years prior, and I was, a very introverted person, so I was fine with making music on my own, but I'd always wanted to be in a band. I grew up in Chicago, an incredible music scene, and there was a lot of weird hybrid stuff there, like the wax track scene, and a lot of people using a lot of effects and real moody stuff, but it was also heavy, but more on the organic industrial side of things, and I really liked that darkness in the music. So I was trying to record stuff like that on my own, and at a certain point in 1993, it was in March, my housemate that I was renting the room from, I had been borrowing like his knives and anything I could use as a percussive instrument to record music, said, I have to introduce you to my neighbor down the street. This guy is in a band, they're really heavy, you might like them. And that was Afzal, the guitar player in Crisis, and it just so happened that at that time period, they were looking for a female singer. It was actually a rift caused in their band with their bass player. He didn't want a female singer, and they did. And he left the band, and they got a new guy, who ended up being Gia. And so a couple days later, Afzal came over and played me some of their music, and I was like, this is what I've been looking for. And I played him some of my stuff, which I thought might be a little too weird for him. But he gave me an audition. And I think a day or two later, literally went and auditioned for the band. And it was a big deal for me. I'd never auditioned for a band like that. And I didn't know these people, and I was really shy. And so I came in there with a song prepared, and I didn't know if I could even sing it. I hadn't sung that style before either. It was something that I was just feeling intuitively. So I asked them to play that song, so if they didn't like it, I could get at it. And it was literally like someone plugged me into the socket. We just all really gelled, and I was flying around the room, and it was like the perfect vocal take. Everything came out, and it was kind of like the new me that I'd been wanting to release was born. And I excused myself because I ended up on the floor, and they were kind of looking down on me and asked me if I was okay, and I thought, okay, that's it, they think I'm crazy. I came back from the bathroom, and they are like, well, would you like to join our band? And I was like, oh, right on. And things from there ended up moving very, very quickly. Demo, album, we started playing shows immediately outside of New York. New York was a tough scene to play. It was a different world then. There weren't a lot of women in music. I didn't really know that until the more shows I played, people were like, oh, you're the only woman out here. And I was like, oh, wow, you're right. I grew up listening to a lot of British music, so there was always women, like Susan the Banshees and Cocktail Twist. So it was a real interesting new world for me. I loved heavy music. I loved that kind of metal. And all the bands I'd see, I really felt the intensity of the drums and the guitars. And that's, what I did for 13 years, which is kind of a significant number. Death, transition, transformation, number of the goddess. And I did that for 13 years, toured around the world. And, I loved every moment of it. It was definitely a sacrificial life. You're on the road, your life is different. And then when I left the band, I didn't want to have anything to do with the music business for a little while. I wanted a real break, because the business side of music is the part that's like kind of crushing. You feel like there's never enough, you're never getting where you want to go. And I wanted to adopt a different philosophy in life. I wanted to be a little bit more grateful for where I was and be happy for what was there, at the same time trying to reach new goals. I just didn't want it to all be suffering, because my personal life was really dark and full of suffering. And, for me, the band was a positive thing. So I left the band, moved to the Bay Area at the very beginning of 2006, and just asked the universe to tell me more about all this other stuff that I've been experiencing since I was a kid, like seeing dead people in the room, experiencing jumps in time, having premonitions, being able to hear people's thoughts, all that kind of stuff people may call like supernatural. And so I went into that side of my life for years. It wasn't until I got very, very deeply involved in that I was ready to make music again.
At what age did you start experiencing these things?
Well, some of the most intense experiences happened, I had them since I was a child, especially being able to read people, know their intentions, and people were telling me one thing and going to do another. That happened to me when I was like 11 or 12, was a big dramatic situation.
Okay.
And then those kind of kept building. Okay. I would say like when I was around 9 or something, they built. When I was younger, I'd had out-of-body experiences. I almost died a couple of times. And then I almost died again when I was 13. And after that, things became really intense. You know, they put me on some medication like a penicillin that I was allergic to, and I started going into shock on a family vacation. And I literally woke up, and the doctor said, "Congratulations, we thought we lost you." It took me a few weeks to recover. I don't really remember a lot of that. Some people call that like your shaman initiation, where you die and you come back and the world is different. And that's when things became more clear, like I was actually seeing people in the room that looked like cartoon ghosts. They looked like very real people from very real time periods, but they were sort of transparent, but I could tell you all the details of their mustache and the stripes in their shirt. And that's when I started getting a lot of helpful information, because I grew up with allergies and asthma, and I had a lot of doctors kill off my immune system using like cortisones and prednisone pills. And this voice kept telling me in my ear to not take those and how to repair my body using herbs. And, you know, in the early 90s, there wasn't a lot of information available on holistic stuff. You really had to know where to look. So this voice was really helping me fix things and heal myself. And so, you know, that was around the time period where things really jumped. And all during the band years, I was having premonitions and asking for protection and knowing things that would happen, and that was full blown. And that got a little intense for me because I was around a lot of people, you know, playing shows and touring, and sometimes you're feeling everyone's pain or hearing their thoughts, and I was like, I don't know if I have enough to give everybody, you know. So that was challenging at times because I didn't know how to deal with it. I wasn't organized. I didn't know that my psychic senses were something I could use to work with, like my 5 senses. I didn't know that, so it was an overload.
Okay. So back to my original question. Did you come up with Crisis? Was that your name or was it their name?
The band gave me that nickname. They had come up with the name of the band, and then they gave me the name Karyn Crisis because stage-wise, as you see, I jump around a lot. Some people call me like an onstage shaman. You know, I really physically got into the performance. So they gave me that name.
Okay.
But also lyrically, I think it fit because I was always looking for the opportunity in a crisis moment. You know, a lot of my lyrics were about the physical limitations of the body versus how free my mind would feel, and how can I get past these limitations of earthly life, you know, into this more expansive side of things. And often you have to go through the crisis to get to that point, you know, so.
Okay, so you brought us to 2006. So where have you been the last 10 years and what have you been doing?
Yeah, it's 2006. Like I said, I started, you know, asking the universe to really teach me things. So I was learning more about my mediumistic side. Like anywhere I went, there were ghosts in the house, and I learned how to help them cross the light if that's what they needed. I knew which ones were spirit attachments and how to back them off from my space. I learned some healing modalities and did a lot of healing work on people, things like cancer, depression. Like I did heavily, like 1,000 hours, you know, just heavily got into healing work. And that opens up your psychic senses and connects you to people in a different way. And then in 2008, I went to go live in Tuscany, and that's where I met Davide Tiso, formerly of Evil Doeth and now Gospel of the Witches. And the house we stayed in was haunted by an old Italian witch, Aradia, which a lot of the Gospel of the Witches material is about. And that took things to another level. But in between those periods, I was really doing what I wanted to do, which was to explore mysticism, Gnosticism, Hermeticism, everything I could get my hands on. As I was exploring those things, the sort of mediumistic side of myself opened up, and I was learning a lot from the spirit world. So I really delved deeply into that side of life, which changed your perspective on life and life after death, before I got back into music.
And then, okay, so that brings us to now with Gospel of Witches. You said you were visited by a spirit in Tuscany, Italy. So did that manifest into the album somehow? Explain that.
Definitely. I was learning a lot of things from her. I was there like every day, a couple hours. It was almost like we had class every morning. So I was learning about things from the chakras and how they work to places in Italy that had to do with witchcraft, and eventually over time what that really was. You know, women in those days were seers and healers and psychics. And they had real power. They were actually able to really cure people, whereas like the doctors, you know, in the church really couldn't do that. And that's where the whole Inquisition came about. Like these women were, I guess, kind of like the Seth books you mentioned. They were channeling healing information, technical medical information from the spirit world, and curing people of diseases. And at a certain point, you know, the church wanted to install like a more male-focused religion, a synthetic religion, and get rid of like all the goddess cults in that world where women had a lot more power. So I was learning about that from her. I was learning about the psychic senses, a lot of different things. And so when it came time to make the album, I wanted to talk about all the different melting pot of magical practices I'd learned, some of the things I'd learned from her, and the history I found out about witches, the true history that, they weren't in league with the devil and they weren't evil. They were, what we call these days healers, psychics, seers, mediums, and they were just actually had palpable power because they were bringing positive changes to their community. And so it was really just a strategic takeover of that natural lifestyle, like a shamanistic lifestyle you would talk about in Italy at that time. And so I wanted to give honor to those women who were all burned at the stake and killed just for the sake of silencing them and getting them out of the way.
Okay, so then the topic of this album is essentially about the witches from Tuscany, Italy. Okay,
yeah, even though it's called Salem's Wounds, that was the first song I wrote lyrics to that Davide had written, and I felt compelled to write it about I felt connected to Salem, and I didn't know why yet. And my education wouldn't be more about what happened in America, but my education in terms of learning from the spirit world and in history books what really happened would take me to southern Italy, which is where Aradia was from, that spirit. So, but I felt like that title was kind of something that anyone would get. Everyone knows Salem. They know what happened there, witch burnings, and it's a good conversation opener.
When you're a medium for Aradia, okay, so I thought that maybe it manifested into the album, but I'm wondering how does it work, and how do you make it manifest, and what do you make it manifest into?
So this is the way to describe things. As a human being, we're all like a radio, giving and sending information all the time. We have our 5 senses that help us navigate the physical world, and then you have your psychic senses that match. Your hearing above your ears, your psychic sight, your psychic sense of feeling. So that gets all the information that's unseen, like emotion. Seem like you go in the room and you can tell whether your girlfriend is in a good or bad mood, or maybe sometimes you get those feelings like I shouldn't take that plane, something bad is going to happen. Those are your psychic senses kicking in, gathering information that's unseen. When someone is a medium, their psychic senses are helping them talk to people who are no longer in physical bodies. So it's based on the idea that life continues on. Like when you die, it's just your physical body that you're shedding, but your consciousness, which is energy, and your personality for a while remain. So as a medium, you can actually communicate with spirit people, like someone's passed on grandma or their friend or their dog. And mediums tend to have specialties. There's also spirit guides of all different types. There's archangels, there's Native American guides, there's gods and goddesses who are, representations of what we as human beings could try to be if we rise to the occasion. And Aradia is like one of those, Buddha, Jesus. They're all different types of regular human beings who had an extraordinary life and just tried to balance the light and darkness within themselves, and were able to tap into powers of the universe and do things like heal and make changes really quickly that we call miracles. And that's, so a medium always talk to that side of the world. Channeling is a little bit different. So sometimes I channel Aradia, meaning that we have a real close blend. She's not just talking to me, but she's helping me sing, or she's helping me do paintings. Like, we share a little bit of energy. Or someone else in the band can experience her through me. Like, she may help them write their drum part. Or, so it's like a co-creative process. It's like having a friend that is like guiding me, that's just not in a physical body.
Oh, okay. What's in the future for Gospel Witches?
Well, you may have seen the video for The Alchemist that Bob Vinya from Immolation made. He's working on another interview video about the recording process. And then the label wants to do another song video to release another song. And then we all want to get a tour together. So we're trying to work on that with the label now. And we already have, Davide and I have already been working on album number 2. So there's a lot in the works. We just, would like to tour more. So we'll see what we can do.
And Bob and Ross from Immolation, you probably have to work between their schedules too to make sure you get it right.
In fact, they're going to be working on a new record. So
yeah. Thank you, Karyn.
Thank you.
I really appreciate this.
I appreciate it.
I look forward to see you again
Sounds good.
on your tour. All right,
awesome.
Thanks a lot.